Hi, Faith. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure. You've written one book, if I'm not mistaken, and it's quite an interesting book, and we will certainly get to that. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you got to the point where you wrote this book.
So, I've been a social worker for 20 years. I've always had this incredible desire to help people. And so that's why I got into the helping mental health field. I'm also a recovery coach for people coming out of narcissistic abusive relationships. And I'm not sure if many people know about that. I'm sure we've all heard the term narcissist and gaslighting, and they go hand in hand. Um, but narcissistic personality is so much deeper and darker than what people think it is. I'm going to read you guys a little bit of the actual definition. So, narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a mental health condition in which a person believes that they are superior. They have absolutely zero empathy, which is like borderlining on sociopath. They have no remorse. They manipulate people to get what they want. They are very calculated in what they do. Like they have very, very fragile egos, which is like the opposite, ironic, because they come across as, arrogant and confident. But the truth is that inside they're so vulnerable that they have to take it out and project it out on other people. So I had no idea what this is. And I've been in the mental health profession for years. And I finally figured out one day, because I was in a 4-year relationship with a malignant narcissist. We share a son together. And it took me a long time to realize that I was in an emotionally, psychologically, mentally abusive relationship with a narcissist. So I started to do so much research and listen to podcasts, and I feel like I got my PhD in narcissism. So everything was wonderful the first year, like love bombing and doted on and cared for. And then something started to shift, like around the second year of our relationship together. And he just became extremely controlling. Everything had to be his way. And if I didn't live up to his expectations, the bar was raised higher and higher. And I was always made to feel like I wasn't good enough. I was worthless. There was something wrong with me. I was crazy. I wasn't allowed to go out with friends. Like that was just, he would just blow up, or I'd get the silent treatment, which was extremely painful. Like for no reason, cold shoulder, wouldn't talk to me. And I just wanted to love him and be loved and be in a happy, healthy relationship. And so I started to believe him, because when you're fed all these toxic thoughts for so many years, you're broken, you're this, you're that. And I felt like I was going crazy. So finally understanding that this is what narcissists are about. They manipulate, and they're like dehumanizing people. And it goes back to empathy, where they have zero regard for how other people feel or what they're going through. I came to find out that there were hidden recorders all over my house. I have absolutely no idea what he thought I was doing, or I was a stay-at-home mom. I also found out that he had put a GPS tracker on my car, so he knew where I was at all times. He put something on the garage door where he would get alerts at what time I left, at what time I came back. sometimes, because everything was in his name, which was a huge mistake, but that's the number one thing with narcissists. So I was like isolated, dependent on him for everything. We would get into fights sometimes where he would like threaten me. One time, it was very strange. We were having some kind of argument. I think it's because I hadn't texted him back like immediately. And he got this crazy look in his face, like literally the pupils like blocked out the iris and his eyes were just black. His face was red, like sweating. And he's like, you better be very careful what you drink. And I was like, what? Why? And he was like, I could put eye drops anytime I want in your drink. And that was like so weird to me. I just knew it wasn't good. So I did research, and eye drops contain something called THZ, I believe it is. It's tetrahydro something. Anyway, it's a blood constrictor. You know, that's why it takes the red out of your eyes. But if it's consumed, it's like a depressant, and it slowly starts to shut down your body and your breathing, and you just pass away. So that was terrifying. Just living on eggshells, never knowing, because then he'd go back to being super nice and charming and loving. So I'm like, okay, maybe he just had a bad day. Maybe he's struggling at work. And then seemingly out of nowhere, he would just turn into a monster. Like that's all I can describe it as. I would get scared of him, so I would run into the bathroom and lock the door and try to use my cell phone. And since it was in his name, he shut off service. When he went into the other room, I went to get my car keys. Car keys were hidden. Many times he would take out the starter in my car. So even if I did try to leave, my car, I couldn't. And we had a young son who was picking up on all of this, to the point where he would start to stutter, and he reverted to bedwetting. And he was always, Mama, why are you always so sad? Why are you always crying? Why is that so mean to you? So that started to turn on the light for me, because I was like, I can't be in this relationship and have my son watch this and think that this is the way you treat people, or God forbid, turn into his father. So I just slowly and surely realized that narcissist, the disease is a real thing. And it's so much darker and scary than people could possibly even realize. So once I discovered that, it was very liberating and almost comforting to see that there's a label to this person, that it's not me. I'm not the crazy one. I'm not the cause of all of the chaos and everything that I was being accused of. I mean, it was like a living hell. So I started to realize I needed to get out of this. I knew that I had to do it very carefully and like planned out, thought out. So one night he came after me. My son was asleep, and he said, you are completely unfit to be a mother. You're severely mentally ill. You're having some sort of mental break. So I need to protect my son and take him away from you. No mother in their right minds would just sit by idly and not do anything. So I called my friend, because I knew. I was like, this is it. I need to get out. I didn't have a plan, but I was like, the universe has my back. That will lead me to where I need to be. Like I never ever gave up hope or faith that I would and could get through this, and my sons would both be okay. So I called up a friend, and she knew like what was going on. At first, people didn't believe me because I was painted out to be the crazy one, the abusive one. But little by little, people noticed, like I lost 30 pounds and I just wasn't sleeping. And I was like a shell of myself. I had like slowly been so eroded. It's like the frog in the boiling water, right? You don't realize you're being boiled until it's too late. And I'm such a compassionate, loving person that I just couldn't even come to terms that there was a human, somebody that actually is the way he is, like cruel and petty. And so I knew the time had come. So I told my friend to come pick me up at 3 a.m. when we knew, hopefully, that this guy was asleep. So I told her to pull into the driveway with the headlights off, and that when I saw her, I would pick up my son out of his bed and just run like hell. So I sat there trembling. When I tell you I've never been this scared in my life, I there's not even words to describe it. Like the adrenaline that was just pumping through my veins. So I was sitting in my son's bedroom, like rocking him in his rocking chair, looking like laser focused on the street. And as soon as I saw her pull up, I just grabbed him. I made sure to bring the blanket that he had been cuddling in, just got into her car, and we drove back to her house. Then, like, literally in that moment in the car, there were no words to speak, because there was just, we knew exactly how bad things had gotten. I think we were both very scared. Um, so the next morning, I called my lawyer and he advised me to get a restraining order. And I was thinking, I was like, well, can you get a restraining order if you haven't like physically been abused? But thank God, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jennifer's Law.
No,
Um,
no.
no, excuse me. It's a law that was passed in Connecticut in 2021.
Okay.
There was a woman called Jennifer Dulos, and she went missing. She had 5 children, and her husband was a malignant narcissist, and she kept reaching out for help to the cops, and something's going to happen to me. This guy's going to kill me. And there was like no credence, like nobody paid attention, and they never found her body. So I don't understand how that was possible when she was asking for help. Um, there was another lady, Jennifer Magnano. So the law is named for both of these women. She too was in a violent relationship with a narcissist, and she was forced to testify against him in court. And when they left court, her perpetrator shot her and killed her in front of her children. And again, like, how did that slip through the cracks? Because she too had reached out for help. And then Gabby Petito is another example of reaching out, and there was domestic violence and nothing was done. Like the cops even came to make a call to the house and they saw what was going on and they did nothing. And she was strangled to death. So I wrote this book to share my experience. And the reason is because I need to be the voice for all of the victims who have been silenced and no longer have a voice. I want people to know that if something doesn't feel right in a relationship, if you're not respected, if you're not loved unconditionally, if you're not being like cheerleaded on, and just believe yourself. We are not the crazy ones. We are not at fault. We are not to blame. And we need to derive the strength to get out of the relationship. And I say I escaped my relationship because there is no breakup with these people. They pursue you. And many women who are in domestically violent relationships, like for the most part, society judges us, right? Like, why don't you leave? If you don't leave, you have it coming to you. It's your fault. Nobody comprehends how much more complex it is. Like, we are terrified of losing custody of our children. We've been stripped away of all resources financially. Our support system has been pushed away. because these predators are like lions. They like to isolate us when we are the most vulnerable, and then that's when they attack. So women feel stuck and they stay, and then they rationalize, I'll be better. I won't piss him off this time. I'll just do what he wants. And it doesn't change. And narcissists in particular, there is no cure. There is no cure. They will never, ever, ever change. And it gets so much worse, so much worse. So I need to educate society. I do talks across the country. I train law enforcement, emergency services. I'm reaching up to the court systems because people don't know about this, and narcissists are pros at what they do. They wear the mask. They're charming. They're funny. They just get away with so much because they know how to work the crowd. They're like salespeople. So I want to help people see the red flags. I want them to know that it's not their fault. In my book, I give a lot of information and resources of how to get out of the relationship, what worked for me, what didn't work for me. And it takes women about 7 times to try to leave an abusive relationship before finally leaving it for good, if they make it out alive. Financial control is the number one determining fact of why women stay or go back to their abusers. The most dangerous part is when a woman or man tries to leave the relationship, because that's usually when people get murdered. So that's the scariest period. But I want people to know that it is possible to not only break off the shackles, but to find the strength to pick ourselves up again and find ourselves again, because we have lost ourselves. We've lost our entire identities. We are no longer who we thought we were. So it's been 2 years. I am the happiest and the healthiest that I've ever been. I went through hell during the 4-year relationship, and then the 2 years after. I was struggling from post-narcissistic abuse syndrome, like flashbacks. I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up screaming and sweating, and I developed agoraphobia. I couldn't leave the house. I kept looking around in my own house. Like, I still feel like I'm being recorded or like followed, or just always fight or flight. And I'm starting to heal. And I just want to think of this experience as a catalyst to follow my calling. And my purpose is to help people get out of narcissistic abusive relationships, to educate people about what it actually truly is, and to help people heal, because it is our birth-given right to be unconditionally loved, and we can't fix narcissists, and we need to save ourselves. And I say, people stay for the kids. No, you have to get out for the kids.
That's right.
Because children are so malleable, and they grow up seeing what they see. And I just wanted my sons to know their mother again, because I essentially was like a zombie, and I couldn't show up for themselves. I couldn't show up for myself. I kept trying to like pursue my career as this was going on. And then during the pandemic, I was doing telehealth, and my ex didn't like it that I was doing something for myself. So he would start to mess with the internet. So I would lose connection. And long story short, I was let go from my job. When I moved in with him, I had my own house, which he like forced me to sell. And he wanted me to get rid of all my furniture and stuff because that was from my past and he didn't want anything impeding on our future. And then I'm so upset with myself. He talked me into putting the proceeds of my house into his bank account. So in my mind, I'm like, maybe then he'll love me. Maybe then he'll be nice to me. Maybe, I mean, I have to be self-compassionate with myself right now and not judgmental and be like, why was I so stupid? Like, because I've been at battle for a few years. I can't be at battle with myself. So over $80,000 he ended up taking from me. And so when I got out of the relationship, I'm like, that money would have really helped me right now to sort of forge my own path again. Um, so yeah, that's the reason why I had to write this book. It was a grueling process, going down those ugly, dark, horrible places. I mean, there was crying, there was tears, and there may or may not have been multiple manuscripts that I just ripped up and threw. So yeah, but I knew I had to keep writing so that I could help, even at least if it's one person, then my mission has been completed because I need to get my story and my experience out. And again, listening to so many other people's experiences is what turned the light on for me and totally saved my life and saved my son's lives.
Well, I'm very sorry that this happened to you. I'm also very glad that you got out of it and that you survived it and lived to tell the tale through your book and
Mhm.
wish to help others. You obviously wrote this book after you escaped, and you
Yes,
describe the life that you had immediately and the paranoia you still had. That can't be
yes.
easy. That really can't be easy.
Oh my God. It was brutal. It was terrifying. Yeah, some days I had to step away from the computer. It like re-traumatized me. Um, yeah, it was definitely brutal, but at the same time, like so empowering and liberating and just validating to get my story out there
Mhm.
and healing. It
Yeah,
was very healing. It was very cathartic, but it was hard to be there days for hours because I wanted to get everything down on this book, like in detail. So to have to just relive those experiences, but I kept going to help other people.
for sure.
That's the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you a question, and hopefully you don't bring back any flashbacks, but that escape that you did with your son and your friend helped you get out. That was step one. Many
Hmm.
steps between then and the one we're doing right now, speaking about it.
Yes.
Um, whatever happened to him? How is he still a danger to you?
So we now have a court order and we do the exchanges of our son at the police office,
Okay.
at the police station, because I don't want to be alone with him. I don't fear that he will harm my son because I was the trigger. Like I brought out the monster in him. So as long as I'm not there, I'm praying to God that my son is okay because we have joint custody, which is another thing that lawyers and judges need to understand because they like to do the 50-50. I mean, even that in like healthy relationships is very hard for the children, but narcissists aren't able to be good parents because
Yeah.
they're not able to recognize the needs of their children, the feelings of their children. Like if our son wants to play soccer and it's not convenient for his dad, then our son doesn't get to play soccer.
Mm.
So the kids are the ones that suffer for it. He knows the biggest way to hurt me is through my son. So anything he can try to do regarding our son, he does it. I've learned with narcissists, the best thing to do is go no contact, like cut them out of your life, block them on social media, all of that. Obviously, I can't do that because I have a son. So all the communication we do is through a family app. So it can't be deleted or edited. And my lawyer sees it, the judge sees it, so people can see the communication.
Well, that's good.
And I just try to, yeah. And I just try to put up a silver shield and protect myself. And it took me a year and a half before I could look him in the eyes. We would do the drop-offs, and I either wore dark sunglasses or I just took my son out of his car seat and I'd have him waiting on my lap. So when I saw his dad drive up, I would just let him out and walk to his father because I could not interact. I was terrified. I knew he was thoroughly pissed off now because he saw that he no longer controlled me.
Yeah.
And that's the most amazing thing to hear myself say out loud. This person no longer controls me. And I'm happy. I'm laughing. I hadn't heard my own laugh. And then when I finally heard it, and I was like, oh my gosh, wow, maybe I am still in there, and I'm gonna resurface.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want people to know, never, ever, ever give up.
That's right.
Know what the red flags are. Love yourself. Be brave. Be brave, and it's gonna hurt like hell, but you will get through it to the other side.
Of course.
Yeah.
Have you got any closer to understanding what makes a narcissist, whether they're born that way or childhood trauma? I've been curious about narcissists. Like, why are they narcissists? Why don't they have empathy? What happened in their life? What do you know about that?
Well, narcissists grow up in narcissistic households. So these children are often neglected. They have very low self-esteem. They feel completely unloved. So narcissists have a very fragile ego. So they have to always try to make themselves feel better and expect to be given everything that they did not receive in their childhood. So the abuse, the mental abuse, the coercive control that they have when they're younger, like mental, psychological, all of that is extremely, extremely damaging. And the most formative years of a child's life is from birth to 8 years old. That like molds who we are, and our brain cells are still like developing and stuff.
Absolutely.
And if we're not nurtured and paid attention to and all of that, it stunts our development, and our brain can't develop the way that it should healthily. So that's why also narcissists throw tantrums, because psychologically they're still stuck in the developmental age they were, like when all this trauma was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's definitely environmental. It's trauma from childhood that carries over. It specifically affects their romantic relationships.
Yes.
And the thing is, there's never closure because narcissists don't realize what's happening. But deep down, they know. They know that they weren't loved. They know that they were abused.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it has to do with childhood trauma at the hands of their caretakers.
Okay. You said earlier on that there's no cure for narcissism. This is a twofold question. First of all, how do you know that? And secondly, are there some voices out there that say contrary to that, that yes, there is, it may be a difficult path, not to say that you're going to get back together with your ex-husband, but I'm always hoping that people could change. Is this really a case where that's not possible?
It's really a case where that's not possible. Because, and as a matter of fact, they are the hardest clients for social workers and therapists to deal with, because they are always right. They do not believe they need to change. They think everybody else needs to change. We tried going to therapy, and it just turned into all the ways I was failing him, what was wrong with me, that I was the one. Like, no. I mean, I think in the very, very, very rare case if a narcissist can self-reflect and understand and want to get help, then maybe, but honestly, it's not going to happen. The name of my book is Rising from Ashes, a testament of strength and survival after narcissistic abuse. And I have everything in this book. I've got all my scary stories. I've got advice. I've got the resources and the tools and all the red flags, and people will feel like they have their PhD in narcissism and the abuse, and then hopefully we can continue to spread the word. June 1st is actually Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Month, which is amazing. I mean, that's how bad this thing is, that there's actually a day of recognition about it. And there's support groups for it. Like, that's how bad this is. And people, like, it changes the neurons in their brains, this trauma that they've gone through.
It must.
It's terrible. But the amazing thing is that our brains are malleable. Through neuroplasticity, we can retrain our brains to wire back again in a healthy, functional way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the amazing part. And I think people really do need to talk to professionals and other survivors, because I think without that help and support, it's not impossible, but I think that the support just makes it not as painful.
Faith, it's been such a delight speaking with you and listening to your story, both the tears and the smiles and happiness. What an emotionally packed episode this has been.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, you and your son take care of yourselves, love each other, and I wish you all the success and happiness in the future.
Thank you so much. I wish you the best.
Bye for now. Thank you for watching. And before you go, if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and don't forget to ring that bell for future notifications. You can even leave a comment. All of that really helps in recommending this channel to a larger audience. And if you are an author, I would love to speak with you about your book. Until next time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.